If you are a woman and you tell another woman your problems or your problem, it is likely that she will show empathy, show sympathy, or tell you her problems. And then you will be there in conversation, bonding over your shared problems. And when you see movies like The Color Purple, like, Waiting to Exhale, many of these movies, oftentimes what you're seeing is Black women bonding over shared problems, trauma, historical experiences, toxic relationships, etc. I saw The Color Purple on Christmas Day. I enjoyed this movie. I almost cried a few times. I left feeling empowered. I also left feeling a little bit angry at men and the plight of Black women. And then I realized something. Thought about Fantasia. Thought about Danielle Brooks. I even thought about Oprah. And I thought about that in real life, all of these women have men in their lives. More than likely, they have a problem solver, a provider, a protector. And that this story, The Color Purple, great story, written by Alice Walker, a Black feminist writer, who admitted that she was actually in love with a man at the time when she wrote this story. This is a fictional story. This is a story that the NAACP back, in the 80s when the first version came out was very upset with, because of the depiction of Black men and the lack of balance of the role of the Black man in this movie. And one of the justifications for this movie, again, back in the 80s, if you look at interviews with Oprah and interviews with Whoopi Goldberg, when they defended this movie, they talked about, this is just a movie. It's not even a real story. And it's not, the story is rooted in some historical truth of Alice Walker's, I believe, grandmother, but it is not a exact depiction. Alice Walker openly talked about how she used her imagination to create this story of The Color Purple. But Oprah and Whoopi Goldberg back in the 80s, when they were getting all the backlash, people were protesting back in the 80s about The Color Purple because, again, it said that it depicted the worst case scenario of the Black family, the worst case scenario of Black men. And the justification was, this is just a movie. It's just a movie. This is a story. This is one woman's story. This is not the story of all Black people. This is not the story of all Black men or all Black women. And as I sat in the movie theater on Christmas Day, this past Christmas, watched the new version, which is a musical, by the way, so it's different than the movie that came out in the 80s. This is actually a musical. I felt the emotions. I was sitting around a lot of Black women. It was majority Black women in the theater, some Black men, but majority Black women in the theater. I felt the emotions, the cries and the screams and the cheers and the anger. And, you heard all the grunts and things, those little parts of the movie where, Celie gets her power back. You felt it. It was so potent and it was emotional. And to a lot of Black women, The Color Purple is not just a movie. The Color Purple exemplifies the struggles of Black women, the struggles that Black women have in relationships, and the struggles that many Black women have throughout their lives. If we want to talk about beauty standards, there's so many, strong, independent businesswomen, there's so many themes that this movie deals with. But there's something I want to highlight here. And I said in the beginning that, like I said, Black women and women in general bond over shared problems, shared traumas. Women sit and talk about our weight. We sit and complain about the way we look, or our clothes, or our hair, whatever it is. We're sitting and we're complaining and talking about these things, and we're bonding, right? So I'm not saying this is bad. Like I said, if you call up a woman and tell her that you have a problem and you need help, she may try to help you as best as she can, but it's very likely that conversation will lead down a path of her sharing her problems with you, and now you're both talking about your problems, and that is normal. But I'm gonna tell you something. Call up a man and tell him you have a problem. And not just any man, right? Because some men, we have to admit that not all men are natural problem solvers, but many of them are. Call up a man, tell him about your problems, and it's likely that he may try to solve your problem or help you solve your problem or give you a solution, give you a strategy. And so the biggest lie, in my opinion, ever sold to Black women is that men cause problems. And sometimes they do. But the part that nobody talks about is the problem solvers. Men also solve problems as well. Men solve problems that women cannot solve. Men solve problems naturally that is much harder for a woman to solve, because a woman is going to get caught up often in her own problems. And, again, the woman will show empathy and sympathy and feel sorry for you. And maybe she will help you a little bit. But it's not natural for her to step in and solve your problem in that same way. And so when I left the theater, I thought about Fantasia, who I really like, and especially as of late, as now that she's married, and she just has a different glow about her, a different swag about her. She was, before her marriage, she was always in the news, always in the media for something negative. Now she's married. She seems very happy. Her husband seems to have provided a lot of intangibles, and tangibles for her. And I think about Oprah, who's with Stedman, although we don't know much about their relationship, but he has been a solid, steady, source in her life for many years. Danielle Brooks, who I don't know much about her relationship either, but she is also married. And so I thought about how a lot of Black women left the theater empowered and angry and emotional, and whatever those emotions were, they left the theater in that way. And, many of them went home alone. And the women who played the role, the women behind, the scenes or in front of the camera, many of these women do not live the same emotions that they invoked in you in that movie. The rage, the sadness, even the empowerment. Some of that stuff might even be foreign to them. And this is art. This is the way art imitates life. But I think a lot of times we as people get the two confused. And I just wanted to make this video as a reminder that even Alice Walker herself talked about how she was in love with a man. In love with a man. When she wrote, when she wrote the book Color Purple, The Color Purple, which was made into a movie in the 80s by Steven Spielberg.
Well, at the time that I wrote The Color Purple, which was, over 20 years ago, I was deeply in love with one of the cutest men on the planet, and we were just deliciously happy. And so I felt that the work that I was doing in the novel was somehow carrying this charge of love and passion, and that it was rooted in something.
So even some of the emotions that I left the theater with, Alice Walker, when she wrote the book, may not have even intended. I don't even know. But I just want us to be aware that there's, that this notion that men create all these problems, and believe me, some of them do. But there are a lot of men who solve problems. And there are a lot of men who are the source of why problems get solved. As Fantasia, in her personal real life, often talks about and has received great backlash for being very open about the ways in which her husband helped her solve a lot of problems, financial problems, emotional problems, etc. So as we watch The Color Purple, as we analyze it and all this, let's not forget the reality that many of these actors don't even live. The reality that even the woman who wrote the book wasn't even, she was in love with a man when she wrote The Color Purple. And yet somehow she was still able to bring out the characters in the way she did. Yeah, we need to just be mindful that whatever's on the screen is on the screen, but it may not always translate to real life. So as I conclude, if you're in a relationship, you're experiencing a lot of problems, and this is as a grown woman, not as a little girl like Celie when she was a little girl, as a grown woman. If you're in a relationship and nobody is solving any problems, no problems are, in fact, problems are actually being created out of nowhere. The problem might be you. And why I say that is because as a grown woman, it is your job. If problems are constantly being created out of thin air and no problems are getting solved, then you probably need to exit stage left. So that's why the problem is you, is because you have to be sure of yourself enough to leave. So this notion that men create all these problems, yes, some of them do. And that is when you need to leave. But there are a lot of men who solve problems. And this is the part we don't want to be honest about. This is why some people are not going to see The Color Purple. Some people are going to boycott it like they did back in the 80s. Let me know what you think about this. And if you saw The Color Purple, let me know what you think about the movie, the musical. And I owe you guys information about my business program and where I'm at in my YouTube journey and all the things. So please do stay tuned for this in the new year. Like, share, and subscribe. Click the links in the description box and learn about everything that I do. My business, Curated Legacy LLC, my books, my membership group, Black and Invisible. If you feel compelled, please do donate to my channel via Cash App. And as always, stay tuned for more videos. Bye.